Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going into some pretty intense territory. We've got a collection of real-life accounts from Mexico, and these are just stories. They're true experiences that really show you some raw human vulnerability and, well, the darker side of things there.
That's right. We're looking at fear today, really, in all sorts of forms. Everything from, like, the obvious threat of organized crime to psychological games, even just systemic harassment that happens every day. And by digging into these stories, we're hoping to get past the initial shock, and understand the context, what it all means.
Yeah, exactly. The source material is basically three distinct true stories that were shared online, all happened in Mexico. So buckle up. It's going to be quite a journey, I think, provoking some thought, definitely. Okay, so let's start with the first one. It sounds like something out of a movie, honestly. It involves the Arturo family. Arturo, his wife Maria, their son Eduardo, and their daughter Dana. And the source notes Dana was extremely beautiful. They lived in Mexico City, and they decided to take a long weekend trip down to Acapulco, kind of a normal vacation spot for people they knew.
Yeah, but Acapulco, it's important to get the picture. It used to be the place, right? Super glamorous, movie stars, all that. But then Cancun took over in the 80s, and Acapulco faded a bit. More recently, though, it got, much darker, became a real hotspot for gang warfare. You had these homegrown gangs who really didn't want to give up territory to the big Kaloa cartel, which was trying to move in. And this push by Kaloa into tourist areas, that's a big deal. They weren't just sticking to drug routes anymore. They were trying to control local businesses, through extortion, intimidation. It kind of blurred the lines between crime and just normal life, made things feel really unsafe. But still, tourists like Arturo's family kept going, maybe remembering the old days, or maybe just not fully aware of how bad things had gotten.
Right. So against that backdrop, they're having dinner, a nice seaside restaurant. Then the waiter comes over, and he's clearly nervous. Puts down a bottle of expensive champagne and a note. He sort of gestures. This is from the gentleman over there. Boop, boop, boop. And Arturo looks over, sees four guys, obvious narcos, gold chains, big rings, drinking the really expensive stuff, Johnny Walker Blue Label. Arturo opens the note, and what it says, it's just unbelievable. It says, "This is for you to have a toast with your daughter, as this is the last night you will ever see her."
Wow. Just the nerve to send that message right there in public. And the wording, "have a toast with your daughter." That's not just a threat. It's psychological torture, almost. It's designed to break them right then and there.
Yeah.
Pure intimidation.
Showing off their power, so everyone sees it. Yeah, absolutely chilling. So the family, they didn't hesitate. Arturo just throws down 1,000 pesos on the table. That's like $50, a huge tip. And they just ran it straight back to the hotel, grabbed their bags, didn't even unpack properly from the suitcase, just stuffed things back in. They were terrified, obviously. Just wanted to get out of Acapulco immediately, drive back to Mexico City, hope they could escape whatever this was.
And it is. And that reaction, just fleeing, it really tells you something, doesn't it? No thought of calling the police, nothing like that. Just run. It shows how little faith people might have in getting any actual help when faced with that kind of power.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So they start to drive back. But that road, it's pretty desolate in stretches between Acapulco and Mexico City. Just desert, maybe some, weird little houses, isolated gas stations. It's empty. Arturo pulls into one of these gas stations to fill the tank. Seems normal enough. But while he's pumping gas, two cars suddenly pull in, fast. One blocks the front, one blocks the back. They were trapped. They'd been followed the whole way. Men jump out, AR-15s pointing right at them. And the horror sinks in. They weren't bluffing. They came for Dana. The next part is, it's just horrific. Dana's screaming, kicking. They dragged her out of the car, forced her into one of theirs, and just sped off over the horizon. Gone. Never seen again.
God, the feeling of powerlessness Arturo must have felt, just watching that happen. And the really tragic thing is, this kind of stuff, it often goes unreported. People are terrified of retaliation, right? Not just against them, but their whole family, their community. So this silence, it's not just about one family's loss. It's about the system failing, impunity. These groups operate knowing there are often no real consequences, which just makes the fear worse, and the cycle continues. It just eats away at everything.
Okay, let's shift now. From that kind of brutal, direct violence to something different. Still terrifying, but more psychological. Deception. This next story comes from the narrator when he was 18. It was the summer before he left for college in the U.S. He was living in Mexico City at the time. Big city. And the story starts pretty normally, actually. He woke up late, like noon, at a friend's place after a night of heavy drinking. Had a massive headache, walked home. When he got there, only their maid, Carmen, was home. He mentions that having a maid is, more common for middle-class families in Mexico, cheaper than, say, here. So he lies down, tries to sleep off the headache, and the phone rings. Carmen answers it. A minute later, she comes to his room with a phone. And he sees right away something's wrong. Her hand is shaking. She whispers, like this tiny voice, I think someone has Lenora. Lenora, that was his mom. He takes the phone, totally confused, puts it to his ear, and he just hears this woman screaming. Agony. Can't make out the words, just pain. But hears something about a finger. And his first thought, instant panic. Oh, God, they've got my mom.
Ugh, the mental torment there. Just imagine that feeling. Your mom being tortured somewhere in this massive city. It shows how fast your brain just short circuits when that kind of primal fear hits. You can't think straight. It's pure panic.
Yeah. So the screaming stops. And then this man gets on the line. His voice is calm, but like threateningly calm. You know, he says, we've got your mom. We've already cut off one of her fingers. The narrator says at that point, his vision just went black. Rage, anguish. He felt like he was losing it. The guy starts demanding money the kid doesn't have. So he's frantically searching his parents' room, looking for cash, anything. While this guy on the phone keeps threatening to kill his mom if he doesn't pay up. He's crying, begging the guy to wait for his dad, says his dad has money. Just the worst moments of his life, he said. And then suddenly, he hears the front door open downstairs. And he hears his mother's voice, her actual voice. Sweet angelic, he called it. Yelling at his dad about forgetting something in the car. He just drops the phone, runs downstairs, throws his arms around her, hugs her so tight, then picks the phone back up, yells some random word into a jingle, and slams it down.
Wow. The relief must have been immense. But what he went through, this whole thing, it was actually a scam, a virtual kidnapping. It had just started becoming common in Mexico around then. The way it worked was they'd call random numbers, often hoping a maid would answer first to cause confusion. They play recordings of screams, claim they've kidnapped someone, demand cash right now, meet somewhere quick, threaten horrible things. And it works because it hits that panic button, right? People get so freaked out, so confused, they don't stop to think it through. They just react. Hand over the money. It's a really nasty form of psychological manipulation. Using that fear, that urgency against people. A modern twist on exploiting basic human instincts.
Man. Okay, so we've seen cartel violence. We've seen these elaborate scams. This third story, it takes us somewhere else again. A different kind of fear. More pervasive maybe, rooted in just everyday life, feeling vulnerable. This one comes from the narrator's mother. She was born back in 1963 in a really small rural town in Mexico. Very different world.
Yeah, and her background is key here. She only got through the first year of high school. Couldn't afford the tuition anymore, which is different from the U.S., right? In Mexico, you often pay tuition the whole way through school, not just college. So not finishing school meant she had to start working young, often low-paying jobs, late hours, just to help support her aging father. And their living conditions were tough. No indoor plumbing, no heat or AC, no car, so she walked everywhere. Or she took the bus, which often meant getting home really late at night. And that lack of options, it put her in vulnerable situations more often. It was part of the fabric of her daily life.
Right. And she mentioned that reality, late night buses.
Yeah.
You often ended up sharing them with, as she put it, nighttime weirdos and pervs. The narrator said hearing this story finally made him understand why his mom was always so protective of him growing up, especially his sister. Hating if she was out alone, worried about what she wore. His mom knew those hidden dangers firsthand.
And you have to remember the context of that time and place. A small, old-fashioned town. Very patriarchal. Strong sense of machismo. If a woman was harassed, there was basically nowhere to turn. The attitude was often, men are always right. If something happened, it was probably her fault somehow. Wearing the wrong clothes, being out late, whatever. Victim blaming was common, and the police forget it. Even if they weren't corrupt, which many were, it would just be her word against his. And the man's word always carried more weight. So predators kind of knew they could get away with stuff. There's this built-in impunity for harassment.
So my mother said there was this one particular guy who often rode the late bus. And he seemed to get a kick out of bothering the young women coming home from work. Making crude comments, sometimes trying to touch them, grope them, just harassing them because he could. She said most women just had to put up with it, stay quiet, endure it. Until this one day, she saw this guy, this creeper, walk up to a young woman on the bus and just straight up grab her breast. And he had this big, ugly smirk on his face where he did it. But this woman, she wasn't like the others. She didn't just take it. She stood right up, slapped him hard across the face, started screaming at him, "Don't you touch me again," called him names. She even shamed him, yelled that he wasn't man enough to find a real girlfriend. Everyone on the bus just froze, stared. Some people actually laughed at him.
Ooh, that public humiliation, especially from a woman in that kind of culture, that would have hit him hard. Suddenly, the power dynamic flipped right there in front of everyone. My mother said she saw his face go bright red, then almost purple. It wasn't just anger. It was resentment. Pure fury that she dared to stand up to him, made him look foolish.
But that's not even the end. This is where it gets really dark. Really unsettling. A couple of stops later, the young woman who slapped them gets off the bus. She starts walking down this dark dirt road, no streetlights, late at night. My mother said her breath caught in her throat watching this. She looked over at the man, and she saw this look in his eyes, just the coldest, most hateful fury imaginable, watching that girl walk away. And then he got off the bus too, started walking down the same dark road, following her. My mother, she was just a teenager herself. She saw him following her, getting smaller in the distance. What could she do? She wanted to scream to do something, but she knew it was useless. The bus driver, he would have just said it wasn't his business, the police. They wouldn't have done anything. There was no proof of crime had even happened yet. She felt completely helpless, just watched him go. Then the bus drove on. She got to her stop and ran home. The really chilling part, my mother said she never saw that young woman again, ever. The narrator mentioned the look at his mom's eyes when she told him this story years later, like she was seeing it all over again. A story she'd apparently never told anyone before. Just haunted.
So you take these three stories together. Wow, they're so different on the surface, right? Cartel violence, a phone scam, street harassment. But the threads connecting them are really strong. Vulnerability is huge. How power works or doesn't work is central. And the impact of fear, how it paralyzes, how it silences. In each case, someone's trust or basic sense of safety is just exploited. Whether it's trust in public spaces, family bonds, or just expecting not to be assaulted on a bus. And when the official system's police, justice fail or are seen as failing, it creates this vacuum, doesn't it? Where these other kinds of power, whether it's a cartel or just some creep on a bus, can operate without consequence. It leaves people feeling utterly alone.
Yeah, that feeling of being alone, of powers, it comes through so strongly in all of them. It's what makes them so affecting. You feel that father's anguish, that son's terror and rage, that teenage girl's helpless fear watching someone walk into potential danger. They're not just shocking stories. They really are windows into these extreme human experiences, what happens when your world just falls apart.
And for you, listening, these stories happened in Mexico, sure, but the themes are universal, aren't they? Struggle, resilience, threats that maybe aren't always visible. They're a powerful reminder, I think, to try and understand realities that might be different from our own, to see the darkness that can exist, sometimes hidden in plain sight. It kind of forces you to think about systemic failures, how power imbalances play out in real, devastating ways for individuals.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Thank you so much for sticking with us through these really quite disturbing stories. We hope exploring them has given you something to think about regarding human behavior, society, and just the many faces of fear.
Yeah, maybe leave you with this thought. How much is our own feeling of safety tied to the strength of our communities, our institutions? And what role do we play, maybe even unconsciously, in reinforcing or challenging the things that make others vulnerable?
Good question. Definitely something to reflect on. How different circumstances, different support systems might change these outcomes. We hope you'll join us again next time for another deep dive into compelling topics. And hey, if you found this valuable or just compelling, please consider giving us a like, maybe share it with someone who'd be interested, and subscribe to the channel Horror Docs. It really helps us out. Thanks again for listening.